Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook.
Thank you very much, Paul. Pirates win back-to-back games for the first time ever. Penguins goaltender, or at least a former Penguins goaltender, in a really odd image on Twitter. And could there be fans in the stands at Steeler games? Well, the team president seems to think it's possible. Welcome to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call, powered by FanDuel Sportsbook. I'm Josh Taylor, in tonight for Rich Walsh. We got a lot to talk about. Of course, we can talk about the NFL as the Steelers continue to prepare for the season. During the live training camp show that you saw right here on Pittsburgh CW, Bob Pompiani talked with Steelers owner and president Art Rooney II. He had some interesting things to say. One of the things they talked about was the possibility of fans being in the stands, and we just discussed this a few moments ago during the 10 o'clock news. But Art Rooney II talked about fans being in the stands in games at Heinz Field. He says it's something that they're still looking into. They're still working with the governor's office and trying to find options to make that possible, but it sounds like something that they're still very optimistic about. As of right now, it looks like there will be no fans in the stands, but the team says they are very optimistic they can try to make that work, and that's something they're going to continue to look into. So we'll continue to see how that goes along. And of course, if you want to keep looking at how we can make things work, you want to start looking at the NBA bubble, you want to look at the NHL bubble, but the difference is neither of those groups really have fans right now. Now, the NHL is talking about expanding that a little bit once they get to the conference final. That's going to be something that I'm sure the NFL would keep a really close eye on as far as how they handle that situation with families being involved in the bubble and social distancing and things of that nature. But as of right now, the NFL, I think, still has a long way to go. But we could talk about that. 412-575-2600 on the Borders and Borders hotline. We can take your phone calls. We could talk about that. We could talk about the Pirates. And this is an interesting situation because after having a 4-game losing streak that stretched back to last week, it seemed a lot longer than maybe it was just because of postponed games and such. But they finally got off the schneid last night with the win against Milwaukee. Then they won again today, back-to-back wins for the first time this season. That's what we're talking about here as far as how much this team has struggled with consistency, just more or less from the offensive standpoint, but they've actually put some runs together in back-to-back games. We haven't seen a lot of that so far this season. So if I'm pointing to one thing that's the difference, maybe it's the offense. Maybe it's guys like Adam Frazier and Gregory Polanco hitting home runs. Maybe it's Colin Moran with a couple of big base hits. Maybe it's the resurgence of Brian Reynolds, a double and a triple last night, big double today into the north side notch that drove in a couple runs. So if I'm looking at the difference from just this weekend as opposed to the rest of the season, it's offense. And I've said this before on this very show. If this team had a league average offense, maybe they win 4 or 5 extra games. So, yeah, it's great to see the offense come around. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering where it's been all this time and why we haven't seen it sooner. So it's one of those things that you look at now, especially as this team approaches the trade deadline, and you wonder just who on this team really has any trade value. Are you looking at Adam Frazier as a guy who could be moved? Are you looking at Gregory Polanco that now he's actually starting to show a little bit of some progress here, a little bit of some offensive prowess? Maybe he has some trade value. Is a guy like Josh Bell, still a piece that could be attained for a decent return? Is it too soon to move Brian Reynolds? Is he a guy that you can find maybe get some value for? These are guys that you have to look at individually and just wonder what you can get back in return. And I think that explains a lot as to why Ben Cherington, the GM, said, look, there's nothing that they're really married to doing right now. There's no moves that they have to make. There's no guys that they need to get rid of. And there's also, nothing that they need to really bring in. They're really right now kind of just standing pat. And I think they're waiting for the phone to ring and waiting to see what they're offered, which, however you want to look at it, may be a good thing or a bad thing. I'd make the argument this team can use an infusion of fresh talent. There's a couple different ways you can do that. You can do that in trades or you can do it in the draft. And it doesn't help that this team did not get a full draft class to bring in more fresh talent. So that makes it a little bit more complicated. So a trade might be the only way to do it this season, because if we're expecting it to happen in free agency in the fall, I know I'm not. So to expect that might be asking a little bit too much. But here's what we'll do. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll answer your phone calls. We'll answer your tweets at Josh Taylor HD. We'll talk about it. Stick around.